later at the Oscars. Okay. Our next presenter is Heather Flannery, Chief Executive Officer, Obesity PPM. Come on up, Heather.
Hey there, thanks everyone. Slides? Just want to activate the slides. There we go, okay. So I'm here to convince all of you that in the constellation of blockchain use cases that have been discussed today, those mentioned and those not, that blockchain in healthcare represents the lowest hanging fruit and ought to be brought to the very top of our priority list. When we think about healthcare, and I know this is not a health-focused audience, and there's probably only a small segment of you that work in this space, and so I think it's important to recognize that experts in the field all see it as in crisis. And we sort of quietly soldier on as unfortunately we're in dire risk of insolvency due to our massive problems in healthcare. Few statistics, health spending in 2016 reached $3.3 trillion, and only 71% of payments that were made had no connection to value or outcomes. So the incentives involved in the healthcare system, especially in the United States, are distorted in a number of ways. We are on track to continue the growth of healthcare expenditures, and we're going to be exceeding 20% by 2020. This is dangerous. There's many layers of problems under this, but I think blockchain represents a critical infrastructure layer that will allow us to transform. For those of you outside of healthcare, this used to be the triple aim, and it's now the quadruple aim. But if we wish to lower healthcare costs, we also need to improve patient quality and outcomes, and both patient and provider experience. Blockchain technology is a core enabler across the board of a wide range of use cases in this category. So when looking at that quadruple aim and thinking, how does this technology fit into healthcare and why should it be prioritized, you really have an ideal scenario for process automation, and particularly long-running processes that span business and clinical use cases and particularly move back and forth up and down value chains across organizational boundaries. As you all know, this is the defining characteristic of the complexity of the U.S. healthcare economy. In addition to that, blockchain technology is ideal for sensitive, private exchange of information, both en masse and in research settings, in healthcare delivery settings, and more. And then the tracing and tracking of any kind of asset that represents any unit of value in a way that's tamper-resistant, append-only, auditable, and distributed among network participants. So as we're thinking about the quadruple aim in blockchain technology, it usually comes up, I just don't see how this applies to healthcare. There's too much complexity here. How are we going to add value? And I've identified here 7 key areas where applications of this technology should be able to improve efficiency, strip costs from the process, and so on. So thinking about care coordination, right now we talk a lot about patient-centered care, but meaningfully moving health data among different actors, payers, pharmacies, providers, those are almost near impossibilities in the current state. Health data exists in thousands of duplicated silos and essentially is an unlocked, untapped resource that we cannot use to do what everyone is clinically aware and scientifically aware are best practices. Utilizing this technology, while there are challenges that we're going to get to in a moment, can greatly improve that. The same is true for patient education and engagement, which is a key part of delivering coordinated care and managing the aging population with high prevalences of complex chronic diseases. We also have the ability to create price transparency and again to start addressing the distorted economic incentives that we're dealing with, and to use other technologies to deliver personalization, and at the same time that personalization means finally addressing healthcare disparities that we know are attributable to 60% of population health outcomes as opposed to what happens in clinical settings. We definitely need to improve efficiency and automation. We're talking about a sector that by and large runs on wood pulp fax machines and EDI transactions. The health sector was largely skipped over in terms of a large-scale re-engineering of its back-end processes. We finally have a maturing set of technologies that can allow us to move past those boundaries and lower administrative costs. And then finally, the bench-to-bedside cycle time. So we also have to recognize that the disease status, the social constructs in which the diseases emerge, we need discovery. We need to improve the cycle time from discovery to validation of research findings to translation into practice of those findings. Right now, that cycle, depending on your measurement points, could be 15 to 25 years. We have the capability to bring that way down by re-envisioning the way that we deliver healthcare and the way that we administer clinical research. So another vital element of all of this, and I know this has been mentioned by many other speakers, but this technology does not exist in isolation. We're talking about a convergence of a sort that I don't believe has ever happened in history before. It would be along the lines of the integrated circuit, the steam engine, and the printing press, all reaching commercial viability at around the same time. We have no idea what this looks like, but what we know is that it will be possible for us to make massive change if we approach it intelligently. So we're talking about machine learning, deep learning, natural language processing, robotic processing automation, all being validated, all maturing. We have the Internet of Medical Things that completely changes the data landscape and gets us closer to real-time valuable data. We have the conjoined evolution of biotech and genomics and epigenomics and 3D printing of new tissue types and all of the things in those categories. And blockchain and distributed ledger technology are the rails that are needed to make all of these things work at scale. So instead of thinking what is the value of blockchain technology in isolation, it's important to recognize that it's the enabler. It's what makes it possible to get the value out of this historic convergence, if you will. One important point that bears mentioning is at the same time all of these wonderful things are occurring from an innovation perspective, we also have a sector, health, that grew up and developed a culture where it was not under attack by criminal actors. So from a cybersecurity perspective, the sector is culturally poorly prepared to be the subject of nation-state level cybersecurity attacks. So at the same time all of this opportunity exists, we're not in stasis with respect to cybersecurity. We have increasing threat vectors, greatly increasing attack frequency, and increasing severity of attack, and entirely new vulnerabilities. So there's a justifiable skepticism about blockchain in healthcare, but there is an iterative evolutionary cycle that we're going to need to go through between evolving governance, standards, moving through new and alternative financing models to pay for all of this, and ultimately getting to broad cross-chain interoperability. So our benefit over time, we're going to be doing private permission networks now, and we have a great vision ahead. Thank you very much.